All right, again, thank you for being here for week 2. We're going to be reviewing topics around finance and human resources today. And we're going to start again with some little bit of administrative discussions. Please, if you have questions, or we'll use the chat room to create an interactive approach today, or if there's something that caught your eye and you want to share with others, or if you want to add any background that you have in a particular topic that comes up, please use the chat room to do so. We really appreciate that. We'll go ahead today with the finance. We'll have, which is 24 questions on the exam, 12% of the exam, and human resources, there's 22 questions, or 11% of the exam. So we'll go to slide 2 and I'll turn it over to Nora.
Hi, good morning. Welcome back. Again, just to reintroduce ourselves in case you've forgotten who we are since last week. I'm Nora Powers, co-chair, and Sherry is our illustrious leader. Rick, our famous healthcare administration professor. Michael, our lab director extraordinaire. And Sachin, the best thing that ever happened to us with respect to helping manage these webinar sessions. Next slide. Nick, turn this over to you.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much again for joining us. My name is Nicholas Hans, and I am joined by my partner from Seoul, once again, the great Miss Thuy Do.
And Angela is going to be joining us. What week is healthcare? The technology?
Week 5. She will be
Yeah,
teaching IT and information management.
Okay, next slide. So I added a quick update. I neglected one thing I'll tell you about in a sec, but I did want to clarify. So for the application requirements, it's a total of 4 examples of volunteer activities, 2 of which are community or civic activities, and 2 which are healthcare related activities. And what's new is there's a link within the FACHE site on some examples. So it may help you realize that you've done more volunteer activities than you knew about that would qualify. Also, last week we neglected to indicate that we will be sending a SurveyMonkey out at the end of the series, and we want every bit of feedback you can provide. We're trying to make these bigger, better, more effective, and we really do listen to the suggestions. And don't just wait for the SurveyMonkey. Feel free to share with us at any time. But anyway, there will be one going out. The one thing I did forget on this, and I will add it to the slide when we send out the updates, is Sachin did provide a screenshot of the digital access instructions from the flashcards for whoever's purchasing the flashcards to be on the lookout for that card. And I'll add that to the slide. Are there any other questions from last week that I can follow up on? For the ones that didn't receive the original pre-work email, the introductory, I did send that back out. I didn't get any feedback, or if I did, I apologize if I missed it, to confirm the receipt. So for those of you that I resent it to, or you didn't get it, just please let me know. Got my email address and I'll follow up appropriately. Okay, next slide. Okay, this is our famous finance section. Can't wait to hear Nick's presentation.
Okay, hello again, everyone. My name is Nicholas Hans, and I'll be teaching finance. This is a little bit of a funky topic from my experience. Everybody either loves it or they can't stand it. So we'll try to find a happy in between here so everyone can learn something. I am a newly minted MBA graduate from Clarkson University, and I am set to start a new position as a care coordinator with Magellan Federal on Monday, the 18th. So that's my quick about me. I did my background check and drug test on Thursday, so I guess that means I'm hired. So moving into finance, it's a complex topic. I feel like we could spend at least a couple hours on it, but we won't do that today, especially in healthcare, just because payment in healthcare continues to be just such a huge issue. So talking about financial accounting principles, I know everyone comes from various backgrounds, various designators. Everyone has different experiences, some more finance intensive, some not so much. So really for basic accounting principles, we want to be familiar with GAAP, G-A-A-P, Generally Accepted Accounting Principles. And those are set by the Financial Accounting Standards Board, FASB. And those are a common set of accounting principles, procedures, and most importantly, standards that are to be followed by basically all US companies, regardless of the industry, that produce and submit financial statements. Finance as a whole, this area deals with the planning, development, establishment, analysis, assessment of financial management processes for an organization's capital, budget, accounting, and related reporting systems. Also, feel free to chime in on the chat. We encourage you to be interactive here. Don't be bashful. Don't be shy. And feel free to just raise your hand or stop me if you have a question at any time. So basic accounting principles, and really the big one too right out of the gate here is the principles along with financial reports. We want to have the good sound reporting so we can have a look at what we're doing financially and people don't think we're up to any funny business. So a couple different basic types of reports. You have your income statement, which is also known as P&L or profit and loss. Another one is the balance sheet, which that's your snapshot, that's your picture of the company, the productivity as of a specific date. So income statement and balance sheet, again, big 1, 2, and are kind of easy to be confused and mixed up. So just be mindful of that going forward. The third report that we should be familiar with is the statement of cash flow, which is basically your cash in, cash out. So just think In-N-Out Burger if you're in California. So cash being our most short-term liquid asset, it's important to monitor cash in and cash out at all times. Next bullet, operating budget principles. So operating budget is basically, of course, your personnel and your facilities. So payroll, keeping the lights on, all that kind of stuff. Fixed versus flexible. You have a fixed budget, which is fixed, and then flexible. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic, we're seeing more healthcare organizations moving to flexible budgets just because the situation continues to be so fluid and so dynamic. We're 18 months into this thing and it's still ongoing. So healthcare organizations are utilizing more flexible budgeting practices to kind of stay ahead of the changes. Fixed, of course, is more predictable. So there's that benefit, but flexible is, of course, going to be a lot more wiggle room depending on what's going on. Zero budget, very important. You're going to gather all of your expenses and they must be justified, and you're going to build that budget from the ground up. So I would think like Jenga, if you've ever played Jenga, just building from, I don't know if that's the right example, but building from the ground up. So from zero up. So as opposed to activity based, which is that you're looking at your costs and what leads to those costs. So one is kind of proactive and one technique is more reactive. Variance analysis, that's going to be planned versus active. So, oops, sorry. Plan versus actual, my phone went off. Variance analysis is that's just comparing what you have planned and what actually happened. So that's important for like retrospective purposes. Capital budgeting principles, looking at your bonds, grants, cash, all your different funding, to keep things going, planning and budgeting resources for future and long-term operations. Let's see, what else are reimbursement methodologies? So again, managed care models, national state programs, Medicare, Medicaid. If we're in California, so we have covered California, Medi-Cal, which of course being in the state of California, those programs can be a little involved and intricate. So again, going back to payment, being familiar with the ins and outs of those, and so that your revenue cycle is flows nice and on schedule and isn't interrupted. Let's see, and then value-based, of course, versus fee-for-service, which is the value-based being the more incentive-based care, just the quality versus quantity, which that's, of course, an ongoing debate. But with the passing of the ACA 10 years ago already, the value-based model still is the main model. Productivity measures, we'll talk more about this in a minute. Let's see, hours per patient day, cost per patient, basically your labor hours in versus services out. And then financial controls, internal systems for accounts payable, checks and balances, and then auditing principles, making sure, of course, the revenue cycle is on schedule and all of your accounting principles are being done fair and honestly. Next slide, please. Okay, revenue generation, billing, coding. I'm sure everyone's familiar with ICD-10. ICD-11 is set to be released January 1st, 2022 for the World Health Organization. If you have not received that news yet, let's see. And then, of course, just new creative ways to foster revenue, your investments, just using cash to create more cash. You may do that business-wise. You may be doing that with your personal funds, and pricing strategies. So just being familiar with your services and pricing your services accordingly to maximize the return on the services that you offer. Justifying a new business model. So of course, shareholders, we want to keep them happy, especially if you're in a for-profit type of a clinic or a hospital. Impacts consequences of financial decision-making on ops, healthcare, human resources, quality of care. So just knowing the what's going on in DC, of course, legislation-wise, like I said, the ACA, any healthcare specific legislation coming down the pipeline that may affect payment or just how we do business. Asset management, depreciation schedule. I'm sure many of you are familiar with this. If you buy, especially like a big ticket item, let's say an X-ray machine, you'll want to plan your year 1, year 2, year 3, etc. Depreciation, and then if you plan on using it for, let's say, 5 years, just planning accordingly. Are you going to sell it? Are you going to scrap it? What do you want to do at the end of that life cycle of that purchase? Financing, funding sources, credit, bonds, issuing bonds, again, generating revenue, and philanthropy, foundation work, especially as a nonprofit, basically your fundraising, or if you're a for-profit, do you want to do some community outreach, PR, networking, etc. And then lastly, supply chain systems, which continues to be a hot button issue during the COVID-19 pandemic, being mindful of bottlenecking, critical chain analysis, like all of the ships currently stuck in Port of Los Angeles. That's a great example of bottlenecking. So just keeping an eye on that, and kind of expecting or planning how is that going to impact your revenue cycle. Will it be an adverse effect, or will you be okay? So I'm not sure. So the SCM continues to be a huge deal as we move through this current pandemic. Next slide, please. Okay, let me slow down for a minute here. I'm moving too fast, I know. But let's move into some questions. We'll use our Rick brainwalk techniques to attack these. If you have any questions, please let me know. Question one, and also feel free to chime in on the chat with your A, B, C, or D answer. Net income as a percentage of gross revenues, excuse me, and return on equity are the two most important indicators of profitability, credit worthiness, market strength, or cash position.
Want me to walk through this one?
Go right ahead.
Okay, so finance is not my area, so I have to work on these. So net income as a percentage of tells me that it's a ratio of some type. So what type of ratio would it be? Well, I'm looking at what the numbers are compared, net income and then gross revenues. And sometimes you just have to know things, and ratios are a good thing just to know the categories for sure, if not all the specific ones. But going through this, yeah, creditworthiness tells me we're making a lot of money, maybe. Market strength, perhaps. Cash position doesn't seem like it, but I think it's going to be profitability. So I'm going to go with A. But everyone else is going with D. What is it? Oh, good. All right.
I was going to ask if folks had a reason. Somebody
sure.
asked, would you elaborate on this? Thank you.
Can we go back to question one? I would say that the other three answers are important, but credit worthiness or credit, I guess it's credit worthiness. I thought it was just credit score, market strength or cash position. Those are all important, but profitability is still drives the bus.
And I think we had a good comment. Net income is not necessarily cash on hand, so that was a good connection to make. I think as we look at, you'll see different concepts along the way, and part of the process we have folks go through is to see terms, write them down, and then put your own definitions next to them, which is a good strategy, as well as the specifics of Rick doing the brain walks on how to be thinking about the question. So thank you.
But I would just want to add, when you're preparing for finance, and I know it's one that a lot of people don't really enjoy that much, look at the categories of ratios and see if you can get a good handle on those to start with. And then if you can then see how those work, then you can start putting specifics in. But there's no math on the test. You don't have to actually calculate anything. But if you know what the purposes of the ratios, that will help.
So this is Michael for this question. I think I would get the keywords here, the net income and equity. So those are two terms for using in financial analysis. And financial analysis is profitability is part of the financial analysis. So that's how I'm gonna analyze this question.
Okay, I think we're good. Nick, do you want to read and then Rick can
Sure.
walk
When
us through?
reviewing assets, which element is the most important indication of an organization's liquidity? Buildings and equipment, long-term investments, cash, short-term, land and other assets. Got the old other answer in there.
This is one of the ones of knowing some of the definitions. I'm looking at the question and I'm looking at the word assets. So I know I'm reviewing assets of some type. And then the qualifier is going to be liquidity. Well, I know the definition. Liquidity means that you have quick access to it, that you can get it easily, that it's flexible. So buildings and equipment, no, buildings are definitely not liquid, no matter how good the market is in your community. Long-term investments, that's the opposite of liquidity. Same with land down D. So everyone that I saw put C in, and the short-term investments is good, but cash is the most liquid asset you've got. So I would go with C on this one.
Good job. Yay.
Another key concept in this sentence, which we will harp on constantly, is also most important indicator. Because again, the issue of liquidity is pretty clear cut, hopefully, for everyone. But sometimes you're going to get into murkier issues, and that word most is key. Thank you.
Okay, question 3. Financial statements are important.
Nick, before you do that, can I bring in one of the comments from Ann T, who says she took the test over the summer and there were 2 questions that you did have to do math on. So that's new. That's something we've never heard before. So Ann, can you elaborate on that? I mean, was it anything complex or just stuff you can do in your head, or how bad were they?
It was pretty complex.
Uh-oh.
They were 2 and 3 step word problems. So
Okay, that's a change.
Was it related to finance? Or I know sometimes with HR, they used to ask a lot about figuring out FTEs or some sort of productivity measure, just on really quick math.
no, I believe it was more related to finance, if my memory serves correct.
Good to know.
Good. Thank you for letting us know that one. Back to you, Nick.
It might be net present value or future value, something like that for the calculation. Financial statements are important in order to A, B, C, and D. Identify, measure, record, control mechanism. We have a few A's already.
Quite a few A's. Yay.
I see Sation answered.
I did not see the answers.
Oh. Okay.
It's interesting because both B and C are looking at control mechanisms, and that would be more of a budget, a prospective budget, versus financial statements being more retrospective of what did happen or what is your current status. So D makes no sense at all, so we can eliminate that one easily. But I think we can throw B and C out if you know that what financial statements do. And as Nick said, you got to know the 3 main ones and the difference among them.
So this is Michael. I would consider this as the high road answer, wherein the A identifies and explains the purpose of a financial statements in one sentence. So that's why if I'm answering this question, I would take A because it's the high road answer. So it summarizes the whole perspective of financial statements, which are, which comprises the balance sheets, income statements, cash flows, and equities or net assets. So.
All right, question 4. In most cases, the most favorable opinion that an organization can receive is A, or an,
Well, again, you got to know something about this. You got to know what is an opinion, and we're talking about an auditor's opinion here. So then just let's look at the language. Qualified. Well, hopefully the auditor is qualified, but a qualified statement means there's something that they're not going all the way. They're qualifying it. Adverse, of course, sounds bad, so we throw that one out. If they're totally disclaiming it, that's not a good sign either. So unqualified by process of elimination, even if you don't know the specifics, I would go with the A. Go with D rather. And it looks like A and D is what we have in the chat room. And the answer is?
Rick, thank you for clarifying that that was in cases of audits. And I think I'm going to add that to clarify that in future.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that it's an audit opinion.
Yeah.
Because I mean, if you bring in a consultant and you ask an opinion of what you're doing, again, the word qualified would sound like it's something really good. Where an auditor, a qualified opinion means they're not approving you all the way.
Can I chime in on that one quick? This is per Investopedia.com. An unqualified opinion is an independent auditor's judgment that a company's financial statements are fairly and appropriately presented. So I don't know why it's called unqualified, but that's what it is. So
I think it's because of how they present the letter when they after the audit. They will say, we accepted your the audit or whatever. However, the following are our unqualified opinion. That's why it's called unqualified. There are some things that we have to work on.
yes.
That's correct.
And they're using terms of art, so you have to hire them to explain it to you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, number 5, the purpose of the statement of operations or income statement is to present financial position, net assets, cash receipts, or operating results.
Well, again, you gotta know the definition here of what the 3 major statements are. So I'm trying to remember what they are. So let's see, the income statement is the one that tells you the change, and then what's the one that tells you where you are at that point? But I'm freezing on the name of it, being a non-finance person, but I know it's gonna be one of those two. So I'm gonna go with B. Oh, wait a minute, maybe D. No, yeah, because B is the reasons. So D is the results. Yeah. So yeah, so D is it. C would be the statement of cash flow or changes in cash statement, cash position. Yeah, D. If I put B, I would have been wrong. So
Yeah, I think D is the right one because income statements, are report that are in a calendar year or fiscal year. That's why it says over a period of time.
yeah, A is the balance sheet.
Yeah, balance. Yeah.
Yeah. So again, you got to know the 3 of them.
Number 6, ratios that measure an organization's long-term liquidity are called.
I mean, it seems like A is the obvious one, right? Profitability, not necessarily, because you may be very non-profitable, but you got a lot of cash sitting there. Capital structure, that's getting into how much you have borrowed versus investment, maybe. Efficiency, I wouldn't think so. So it's going to be between A and C, but I think I'm going to go with the obvious one, the liquidity. Even though I'm feeling like they're trying to fool me, but I'm going to go with that one. Ah, see.
So just an advice on this for if you haven't done it, probably you can create also a spreadsheet, all those ratios and definition during your review, because I find this very confusing when I was preparing for the exam. So that's what I did. I created a spreadsheet for all those ratios, financial ratios. So it will help. It helps a lot for me.
Capital structure.
Flashcards. This is a good one for flashcards.
Yeah, capital structure is just debt, combination of debt and equity, which you can have good debt, of course. The liquidity answer, that's like just your current working capital ratio. What else is there? Profitability, operating margin, return on assets, and then efficiency is your accounts receivable, accounts payable, average length of stay, etc. That's a tough one.
Well, for the next three, why don't we just let everyone else answer it in the chat room, and I'll keep my mouth shut and see where we go.
The purpose of the strategic financial plan is to
Right, we're mixed between C and D.
C and D.
I think the key word there is going to be strategic. So what's the answer?
There you
C
go.
is the operating plan, which is not a strategic plan.
Mhm. So this is the link between the strategic plan, which looks 3 to 10 years out, and the operating plan, which is 1 year out.
You convert the operating plan into monetary terms would basically be your budget, your
Yes.
operating budget.
Yes. So determines whether an organization can make progress toward accomplishing strategic plan over the next 10 years. That's another tough one. Question 8, a zero-based plan or budget could best be described as.
Mhm.
Okay, looks like we have A, 1B.
And the answer is, you did a nice job, Nick, in your presentation on describing zero-based budget, really starting anew. So thank you.
I tried to give some hints for the upcoming questions, so that's all. So just build the confidence up.
You need him there before you do your test then, just to give a couple of hints.
9, managed care plans that exert the most control over providers and therefore save the most money in provider payments are.
this is another one of, you gotta know something about each of these and what they are. And there was one practice question, I think it might have been in healthcare, that gave the continuum from least to most. So we could do that here. Managed indemnity has the least control over the providers, then preferred provider organizations, then point of service. Closed panel would be where Kaiser's an example of closed panel,
Mhm.
where the providers are actually in-house functionally. So I would say it's C on this one.
And you're correct, Rick. It's the definitions between, particularly a lot of people have trouble, including me, and I work for a managed care organization, are the difference between the closed panel and point of service HMOs or preferred provider organizations. And it's helpful to remember that a point of service HMO is basically an HMO benefit with some sort of out-of-network benefit. Closed panels are, like you said, in-house, and there are no out-of-network benefits. So, and then the preferred provider organization is the bigger panel that usually doesn't have as many restrictions on referrals. So, and again, that information you can study in the healthcare section as well.
And the keywords there is most control over, most control, so they can, in the questions, most control. So you still
Correct.
have controls, but the closed panel has the most control over the provider. So.
Last question, a productivity measure that takes into account the level of skill required to accomplish the task is.
Well, we've got lots of B's there.
The key to this question is reading the entire question carefully.
In law school, we refer to that as RTFQ, read the question. The F was silent. Nope, now we've got some D and a couple of C's. So what's the answer?
And there's a former chief nurse in the patient care services world. This is incredibly important. Is it an RN that's doing the work to meet your productivity, or is it a medical assistant? And looking at when people answer D, and Nora mentioned, really read the question. I think you probably went back to level of skill. And when you look at level of skill, that would mean different disciplines within your models. So good job. It's a good question too. It's a really good question to be thinking about, because this is the type of questions that will be asked that as Nora and Rick have taken you through the brain walk, will really test your ability to read the questions slowly and backwards, maybe, right, Nora?
You know, that's my mantra, is to read it backwards. Several people have found that very helpful.
Thanks, Nick. Thank you for finance. We appreciate you. Nora?
Okay, so I get my favorite topic. I say that facetiously, and only because there's so much level of detail in here. So again, when we get into this, it's going to be really, really helpful to understand the various components of the whole human resources spectrum. And these highlights are really pretty good. They really, again, this is straight out of ACHE's site. So this is their definition of the highlights of what you need to understand. I'm not going to go through in detail because we're running short on time, and I really want to spend time on the questions and on Quizlet in particular. But again, a really, really important thing to remember here is this is national in scope. So let's not get into the weeds of California. As useful as it is, and I learn something every time when we talk and we start going, but in California, no, this is national. And some of these Rick will be touching on when we're talking rules and regs as well. So you'll see some crosswalks again between those two. Okay, so again, we provided the pre-work recording that Rick had prepared, and you have the highlights here. So let's go ahead and jump into the questions, so at least we can spend some time on parsing those apart. Okay, which of the following is typically performed during a background check? Verification of finances, personal finances, involvement in religious or political activities, previous employment or education claims, and prior performance evaluations. Again, if you're looking at the question, typically performed, and which of the following? So you already know only one answer is really going to be correct, and it's typical. Let's see what we've got people answering. Got C's. Rick, would you like to do a brain walk on this?
Verification of personal finances, it's not unheard of for them to run a credit check, but it's, more at the higher levels, or, where people have more financial responsibility. So I wouldn't call it typical. Involvement in religious or political gets you into some illegal bias stuff that you want to avoid. Previous employment or educational claims, well, guess what? People lie on their application. And I always tell my students that's the one guaranteed way of being fired even years later, if they figure out they lied on the application. So C is definitely up there. Performance evaluations, yeah, most of us don't get to look at those. We'd love to. We'd love to know what your actual write-up was last time, but we're not going to get them. We're going to get at most, yeah, the person worked for us, it was okay. So by elimination, I'll go with C, which looks like so is everyone in the chat room.
Okay, next question. Okay, again, a key word here, the primary purpose of a well-developed performance appraisal system is to, and of course that means we need to know what a performance appraisal system is. So compare employees across the organization, provide employees with developmental feedback and guidance, ensure that the employees understand the job they're supposed to be doing, and determine how well management engages employees. Again, if we're looking, we need to know what a performance appraisal system is and the primary purpose of one. Okay, so what kind of answers have we got? We've got B's coming up. And Rick, I'd appreciate your brain walk here.
Comparing employees is one technique, but it's the technique towards the goal of figuring out whether someone's doing well. So it's not the purpose of it. Providing them with feedback and development is a purpose. We're appraising people not to fire them, but hopefully to make them better. So B sounds good. Ensure the employees understand the job. God, I hope we do that before we start appraising them. It'd be nice if we actually told them what we expect. And determining how well management engages. Nope, that's not the appraisal system for the employees. It might be one factor in evaluating managers. So again, I think I could eliminate A, C, and D and stick with B.
And I added,
So-
oh, go ahead, Norm.
No, go ahead.
I added into the chat that don't worry if the answer seems so obvious and it might throw you, because we hear over and over from those folks taking the exam, and we remember that too from our exams, is that there'll be a very obvious, straightforward question, and then the next one will be way out there and ambiguous. So don't, just answer it and move on, and don't worry about that. We hear that consistently.
Okay, next question. Okay, now this is a lot of words. Again, let's be really careful with reading this. With growing frequency, employees who have been dismissed are resorting to lawsuits for redress. Redress? How do you pronounce that, Rick? In such case, in such cases, the court may find in favor of the plaintiff if the employer dismissed that plaintiff for cause, but without using progressive discipline, without cause, before the end of their probationary period, and for union organizing activities. Okay, so what we got here? Okay, we've got B, D's. Now remember, again, this isn't California specific, this is national. So B, and this one for the brain walk, just really quick, I can eliminate C almost right away because, before the end of the probationary period, that's the whole point of a probationary period. For union organizing activities, that one, maybe keep that in there. For cause, but without using progressive discipline. For most of at-will states, I'm not sure if that would apply. And without cause, is that getting more scrutiny? So I would go with B. And again, I don't remember the answers to these questions. So, okay, there it is. Did I get lucky? Well, the reason I was thinking it's without cause is because I'm not sure that it's actually required to have progressive discipline to show that for firing someone. I think it'd be helpful sometimes in some cases to have that, but not necessarily required. I think without cause is more likely because that's where they, for some reason, sometimes union organizing activities, which are allowed, you may be firing that person without cause, without specifically stating that reason. So for me, I took that as the broader answer. The others on our team, Rick, how do you feel about that?
Well, yeah, I mean, B, both look right to me, but B is the broader one. So I would go with that one. Specifically, yes, if you're fired for union organizing, then you're going to have a good lawsuit. But there's other reasons you could win as well. So I would go with B.
Okay.
Not using progressive discipline might be something that's required only if you've negotiated a contract that has it in the contract that they have to do the procedure.
So the question is, but what about that concept of at will? And again, employers can say that they fired this person because they, employment at will, but it's the increasing scrutiny that is the key in this.
The at will state specific is the question, right?
Well, that's true. That can be very state
So,
specific.
so yeah, it's
Yeah, remember not to look at California as the answer. We are an at-will state, but doesn't mean others are.
Okay, okay. So which of the following would be considered the most effective approach to preventing the need for employee disciplinary action? Having an accurate job description works for me. Having an employee orientation program, not sure that's the most effective approach.
Depends what
Implementing, I'm sorry?
depends what they cover in the orientation.
Correct. But again, the most effective.
Yeah.
Implementing a performance-based compensation system, or giving managers a small span of control. Again, we're looking at the most effective approach to preventing the need, not what is part of an employee disciplinary action, but the need for one. And let's see, what are we getting? Oh, we've got a lot of A's. I believe that to be appropriate as well, because how can you have a need for employee disciplinary action unless it's very clear on what the job description is and what their duties are? So I'd go with A. Okay. And again, so did that brainwalk, my little bit of brainwalk, make sense? And everybody seems to have gotten it right too. So we've got the smartest people in the room this morning. Okay, which activity should precede the beginning of a recruitment process for a new employee? Okay, activity that should precede the beginning. So it's like a pre-beginning here. So obtaining information from employees in a similar position to assess the validity of the job description, assess the costs of various forms of recruitment, making a decision whether to emphasize internal or external recruitment, or conducting a job analysis. And Rick, I'd appreciate your brainwalk on this one.
Oh, gee, thanks. Okay, so asking employees about the validity is something obviously you ought to do regularly, is evaluate whether your positions are good, but I don't know if that's necessarily part of the recruitment process, more ongoing. Assess the cost, no, that's not going to tell you anything until you've decided to hire someone, then you can figure out how to recruit them. Same with C. So I think, you know, the recruitment process is going to start with the job analysis. What do we need someone to do? So I would go with D. You know, someone says C makes sense also, and it makes sense to make that decision, but that's not the beginning part. That's part of your decision of how to hire, not who to hire or what to hire.
Okay, next question. The evaluation of senior management is best administered when criteria are established and known to both parties. Helpful, correct? On a scheduled periodic basis, after consultation with the executive committee of the board, or in conjunction with the salary adjustment. And again, if you go back to the question, best administered, how is it best administered? And let's see, what are we getting? B's. Rick, can you?
I'm gonna not go with B because it's not the only time you do it. I mean, obviously, yeah, you do want an annual review, but there's times you're going to do reviews off schedule because of things that are happening, or, you know, good or bad. Maybe in conjunction with end of a big project, you're going to evaluate. So I'm going to eliminate that. C is certainly true for the CEO, but not necessarily below that. D definitely not. So I actually would go with A.
So I did not intentionally mean to give a clue to the answer. I had intended to say, well, that's helpful on B as well. D, I was going to say not very helpful at all. And then C was easy to eliminate, actually, I thought. But so I noticed that there were some answers that changed from B to A when I went out and said best, the keyword best. So, and again, Rick is better at the brain walk than I am. So thank you, Rick. Okay, next question. Critical incidence technique of employee performance appraisal requires raters to, I always forget the answer to this one. Okay. Select statements that fit the performance characteristics of individuals. Select the highest and lowest performing employees in a work unit. Record the degree to which specific behaviors are performed, and record behaviors of employees that are related to both good and poor performance. So it's really helpful to know the definition of a critical incidence technique or performance approval and what it requires raters to do. So Rick, you're stronger at this one than I am.
Oh, thanks. I have absolutely no idea on this one. Let me see if I can do it by process of elimination, because I really don't know. Select statements that fit the performance characteristics. Maybe, I mean, that's one thing you do of, how are people performing? So maybe select statements. The highest and lowest performing, I know that's a specific technique. I can't remember what it's called, but I'm going to eliminate that one because I don't think it's critical incident. Record the degree to which specified behaviors. Are the specified behaviors tied to a critical incident? I mean, I'm a disaster person. I think of critical incident differently, probably. I can't eliminate C. Good bad performance just sounds like kind of a traditional way of doing it. So I'm between A and C, and
So Rick, before I'm sorry.
I see people putting D's and C's down.
So remember who is having to do the appraisal? Read this backwards. Who's required to do the appraisal? A rater, correct? So if you know nothing about this, now I may be totally off base because I don't remember the answer either. But if you're reading this backwards, it's a rater that's having to do something. Which of these seems to be related to rating?
Well, to me, all of them, you're either selecting something or recording something. So maybe select is higher than record.
I'm looking at having to rate highest and lowest in a work unit.
So the rating, Nora, is a different type of different type of performance appraisal. So
am I taking us off? Okay, sorry.
Yeah. So there's there's like grading, management by objectives. Those are different types of performance appraisal. So critical incidents is one type of appraisal.
Okay.
That is like like a narrative way, but you have to include both the good and bad to balance the appraisal of the employee. Okay.
All right. And the answer is? See, never listen to me anymore. Promise. Sorry.
I just want
You don't have to get a perfect score, and there are areas you just plain don't know. So if you have absolutely no idea, see if you can figure it out, try to eliminate them, use the true false for each of them. Or you got 4 true false questions instead of multiple choice. See if that will help you narrow down. And even if you got it down to 2 and you flip a coin, 50-50 is better than 1 out of 4. So it improves your chances, but you don't need to get all of them right.
Yeah, so I remember there were quite few questions when I took the exam on this on performance appraisal. So just remember the different types of appraisal and be able to to differentiate those and apply that in a real life basis.
So I will say that a previous participant in our sessions did say that it was very helpful to realize how not to go down into a rabbit hole. So hopefully Hopefully I showed you how not to, how easy it is to go down a rabbit hole.
And again, remember, you've got plenty of time. You got 6 hours to take this thing. If it takes you more than 2 hours, it's because I don't know why, you're probably playing around with it a lot, but you do have time to spend on one question. You don't have to get stressed by it. Spend the time, see if you can work it out. If you can't, take your best guess, then move on, but don't panic.
So that was a useful question, I believe. Okay. According to Hertzberg's Hygiene and Motivators theory of motivation, cleanliness of the workplace plays an important role in motivation. The absence of adequate compensation can be a dissatisfier, but the presence of adequate compensation is not a motivator. Employees are motivated by money and factors intrinsic to the job itself, or extrinsic factors are prime motivators. So truly, you need to understand what the Hertzberg's Hygiene and Motivators theory of motivation is. So Sherry, this is the one you particularly excel at. You able to give us the brain walk on this?
I'll try. Internet a little bit unstable, so I'll try though. Just the important piece as people are looking at this is answering. We've heard over and over is that for most individuals, they're not motivated by money. That's not an intrinsic inside factor, but that it can be a dissatisfier. So I think that that's an important thing to be considering when you're looking at that. Comes from within. Let's see what the answer is. That's what we got. So think about those intrinsics from inside. Extrinsics are not as necessarily motivators in this. And it's fun to read some of these. I think it's fun. I know I sound like Flo. Numbers, digits, it's all fun. But Hertzberg's Hygiene and Motivators are very good because they will be used throughout the exam in different locations.
And Hertzberg rather basically takes Maslow and divides it into 2 categories instead of the 5 ranks. And with Maslow, when you reach up to self-actualization, that's the intrinsic value of the work itself. That's the highest motivator, where the physiological ones, including money, are the lowest level. So even if you don't remember Hertzberg, if you remember that much, and everyone knows Maslow probably better than Hertzberg. So that can help you figure it out.
I'm sorry.
We'll transition to Quizlet. Does that sound
That sounds
right?
good.
Yeah, before we do that, I want to touch what Rick is saying. There is, when we're doing our closing comments, when we're talking about, some tips for test taking, it is another true statement to say, if you be careful not to change a right answer to a wrong one, again, which is going down that rabbit hole theory. So thanks for pointing that out, Rick. I think we all learned that in school too, but yeah. Thank you for that. Okay. So yes, let's have a few minutes then to cover Quizlet.
Right.
So, okay.
All right, everyone. Thank you. Let me open up the Quizlet right now. We'll work on finances first. How does that sound to everybody?
Perfect.
Awesome. Alrighty.
So we will have a brief tutorial on how to get into, how to get into Quizlet for, to find ACHE's files and stuff, but we'll be doing that later. Okay.
Alrighty. So yeah, this is the test, I guess the test feature for the finance folder. We'll go first with the 5 multiple choice questions, and then after that we'll transition into true false. So different thinking caps. Yeah, so first question, can everyone see my screen okay, scrolling and such?
Yes.
Cool. Thank you, Nora. All right, first question is, all right, 1, print bill, submit bill, follow up on bill, and collect it. or it's a bill resolution. So they don't come in letters. So the first one would be A. So the resource-based relative scale value, or value scale, excuse me. B, payment cycle. C, balance sheet. Or D, patient ledger. So what is this process called? I don't know if I am able to pull up the chat. That looks
Looks like
like
B. It seems as
B as
though.
in
Mhm.
Great.
B as in Bravo.
oh yes. I was like, I'm trying to so payment cycle, yeah. Awesome. Thank you, everybody. Next question. Let me see if I could just kind of minimize that. The economic resources that have a life of 1 year or more, for instance, the organization expects to consume them over a span longer than 1 year, is called what? Is it Medicaid, A, Medicaid, B, general ledger, C, non-current assets, or D, accounts receivable? Looks like solid C from everyone.
C, Charlie.
Charlie, there we go. Thank you, Sherry.
I think,
So
Tweet too, you might want to scroll up a little higher. We got that in the chat, so that maybe the one you're answering is closer to the top.
oh, okay. Thank you, thank you. Let's see. Oh, is it not scrolling accordingly?
There you go. As you're
Okay,
scrolling up, as you get 3 a little higher, I think people could see it.
Oh.
There you go. Perfect.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
3, income actually received as opposed to that initially posted equal to gross revenue minus adjustments for bad debt, charity, and discounts to third parties. That A, gross revenue, B, net revenue, C, net present value, or D, operating income. Looks like we're getting answers for B.
B, Bravo.
Oh, awesome, net revenue, thank you. Next question. Budgeting that segregates the budget. Is that called comprehensive budgeting, limited in scope budgeting, incremental budgeting, or discrete budgets?
We've got D, Delta.
Thank you. Discrete budgets. And last, multiple choice. A statement that shows an organization's financial position at a specific point in time. Would that be transfer pricing, a balance sheet, fixed budgets, or gross revenue? So A for transfer pricing, B balance sheet, C fixed budgets, or D gross revenue. Do I see B as in Bravo, Sherry?
B, Bravo.
Awesome. Great. So transitioning to true false. Number 1, the amount patients are expected to pay for services, also called prices or rates, is considered as a working capital. Is that true or false?
F, false, Foxtrot.
Thank you. All right. Good pacing. Next, a program created by the federal government, funded by the federal and state governments, and administered by the state government to provide free or low-cost healthcare to low-income recipients is called general ledger. True or false?
We've got F, Foxtrot, false.
False. Great. Sounds really close to Medicaid or Medi-Cal. Alrighty, so number 3, a set of medical codes used to report medical, surgical, and diagnostic procedures and services. Is that called any willing provider statutes? True or false?
We're getting F, Foxtrot, false.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, all right. Budgets that take into account fluctuations in volume, at least within ranges expressed as probabilities, and adjust variable expenses accordingly. Is that fixed budgets, true or false?
More F, Foxtrot, false.
Yeah, some keywords there. Then next, the amount, and last question, the amount of cash required to support operations for the period of delay in collecting revenues. Capital budgeting, true or false?
We had a T, but majority are F, Foxtrot, false.
Okay, there's a lot of falses in this one. It's not all of them. All right, so let's check our answers. Thank you for your responses, everybody. All right, so kind of going up. Looks like we've gotten all but 1. So number 1 is correct, 2 is good, 3 is also correct, and number 4 is where we missed the question. It says budgeting that segregates the budgets. It's limited in scope budgeting rather than discrete budgeting. Interesting.
Yeah. I had not seen that question before, and it'd be interesting to explore those definitions.
Yeah. Would anybody like to, does anyone know much about this, this type of budgeting?
So I recommend somebody research it and get back to us next week,
Yeah.
or send the response to me and I'll add it to our FAQ thing.
Sounds like a good plan. But everything else looks great. So far, this is looking good.
So one of the comments had been that these are looking incredibly obvious, and A, yes. B, don't let that fool you. Particularly if it's really worried. Again, that fine line though, like Rick said, don't go changing a correct answer if your gut's telling you something right away. And the beauty of Quizlet is that every time you generate a test, it's random. So you may see the same questions again, but you usually have lots of random questions all pulled together with each test you generate.
That's right. And also you could change the amount of questions there are. For this type of purpose, we've did 5 to 5, but you could do more to kind of like just test your endurance as well.
And you can generate one that is for all knowledge sections, 230 questions. So as if you're taking the full exam. So.
And that's probably a good idea to do right before you take the real exam, is do a simulated one of 130 questions.
Mm-hmm.
And thank you, Twee. She's showing us now how she's going to switch to human resources.
Yeah, so right now I'm going to, and I do apologize, my internet is going very sluggish right now. So bear with me. All right, so going to the library.
I apologize. This also reminds me, I was supposed to respond to the question about other sources on the internet to utilize for studying. We were really careful to use only the resources and links to ACHE sponsored links. There are others that are available, but those are created by other former students. We can't vouch for the validity of those, but you may find them helpful. They may present other materials that we haven't, but we can't vouch for the validity of what you'll find in there. And I apologize for not having responded to that sooner.
Awesome. Thank you, Laura, for sharing that. I totally forgot about that question too. So it's good that we're revisiting that today. So yeah, going to different folders and just selecting the section that you want to work on, I go to your library here, the tab, and I select the folders just because it's just easier for me to see which one is ACHE and which one is more of like a personalized set. So this ACHE has 11 sets. So going here to the knowledge, the library, and the knowledge resource, and it is thinking. Yeah, so it's numbered here, depending on the section. With human resources, it'll be number 6, and it's going here, but as you can tell, there's numerous sets and or subfolders in this area that you can explore. There's also a sample test here, it looks like. But we'll go to HR. And on here, there's like a set of icons that show the study methods. I go to test here. You're welcome to explore and navigate which one works best for your study strategy. And this has already been preset to the, oh, it looks like this one is not preset. And so this is a great opportunity to show the options. We will simply do the multiple choice and true or false. So those will be highlighted, and the question limit will be out of 10. 10 out of 44 questions, terms, okay. So let's create the new test. And here we go. So first question for HR. So switching lenses right now. A type of retirement plan with strict eligibility and vast requirements and strict taxable limits in which an employee receives more tax benefits than from a non-qualified plan. Typically, the employee and employer are not taxed until the time a distribution is made. So is it A, the Fair Labor Standards Act, B, Qualified Retirement Plan, C, Defined Contribution Plan, or D, Progressive Discipline System?
C.
C, and Charlie.
C,
Defined.
Charlie.
Thank you. Next is the 1938 plan that establishes a federal minimum wage, establishes a standard 40-hour work week, and contains provisions for work performed beyond the standard work week. Also sets limits on child labor. Again, A, Fair Labor Standards Act, Human Resources Information System, C, Impaired Practitioner, or D, Qualified Retirement Plan.
We have A, alpha.
Yes, thank you, Sherry. Number 3, the result of a practice that may appear to be neutral but has a discriminatory effect. Is it A, criterion deficiency, B, performance standards, C, negligent hiring, or D, disparate impact?
D, delta.
Great. Indicators of what a job is meant to accomplish, how performance is measured, and what the expected levels of job performance are. Would that be a retaliatory, am I saying that correctly? Retaliatory discharge, okay. Compensation strategy, B, C, performance standards, or D, criterion deficiency?
C, Charlie.
Yes, okay, performance standards. And last question for this section, a binding type of dispute resolution in which both parties agree beforehand to abide by the decision of a neutral third party called an arbitrator. Is it A, arbitration, B, training design, C, turnover rate, or D, mediation?
We're kind of caught between D and A, but one more person vote. One more person put your. Oh, okay, we've got, well, let's do A.
Okay, arbitration. Okay, thank you.
Alpha.
Alpha. Okay. All right, true or false? Hopefully this might be less. Actually, the questions seem pretty good too. So, A, a ratio that provides a summary of the gross movement in and out of staff in an organization during a specific time frame. Is that considered a turnover rate, true or false?
We've got T,
True.
Tango. Mhm.
Tango. A form of performance evaluation in which many individuals, such as supervisors, subordinates, other coworkers, customers, and patients, provide a richer description of an employee's performance than may be obtained from a single rater, also referred to as 360-degree feedback or multi-rater assessment, is considered as or is called a realistic job preview. True or false? That's a good question.
Well, looks like most is F. Foxtrot.
F.
Yeah.
Okay. Third question. Measures of human resources, outcomes, and performance is called HR metrics. True or false?
T,
True. Okay.
Tango.
Thank you. Health professionals such as therapists, medical and radiologic technologists, social workers, health educators, and other ancillary personnel is called training development.
F, Foxtrot.
Last question, the step of the training design process in which the training materials, including the curriculum and learning outcomes, take shape, also includes a dry run and feedback, is training development.
We've got T, Tango.
Thank you, Sharon. Let's check the answers. 90%. Okay, so I'm gonna scroll up. Oh, that was the first question. Oh, it's a qualified retirement plan. Huh. Okay. But everything else looks correct. Good job, everyone.
Well,
Does
thank you
anyone
very
have
much, Tui. Thank you for taking us through Quizlet. Non-qualified used in the question, so that's a good point. Is these again are opportunities to write down words that you want to follow up with after this in your study plan and start to put together your definitions, maybe a table if you choose to do it that way. So thank you very much. To close, we'll just again talk about what you'll receive this week. Nora, if you could give us that update. You're still on mute.
I had a lot to say too. Answering a question about Quizlet, how to get Quizlet. This is, you purchase the flashcards through ACHE. And you can find the links on the materials we presented for or on the ACHE site. And then within the actual physical box of flash, oh, there it is. Thank you, Sachin. He'd sent me this and I had neglected to put it in. I will add this to an updated FAQ that I'll be sending out on the next email.
Yeah, this is, shows the unique code you'll get.
Right, and it's good for 12 months. And then, and it's not transferable to someone else. So but I think it's the best thing since sliced bread. I really do think it's helpful. Okay, so anyway, after the last week's session, prior to last week's session, you should have received the intro pre-work for the first session. Afterwards, you should have received 2 emails, the follow-up with the information from the first session, and then the pre-work for this one, which included the links and the link to the pre-recorded presentations that from our illustrious healthcare administration professor, as well as the highlights to concentrate on as you're listening to that. Following this session with the next few days, you should get another follow-up email with the presentation materials here with a couple of things that I'll update on the FAQ slide, as well as the additional information we have within our system. For example, the 2019 presentation that Cal has put in, because of the recording you're getting from Rick, you don't have the actual presentation. We included one for your reference, and hopefully you'll find it helpful. But again, it's not to say that we're providing everything and all you need to do is study our materials, because they're not as broad as what you're going to need to study. So we'll be sending the link to our famous YouTube recording from our YouTube channel, award-winning. Today's presentations, follow-up sample questions also that we've obtained through ACHE over time. Some of them may be older, but again, the key to studying for this exam is to study the structure of the questions in terms of how to take the exam. The materials, what we're trying to do is present at least highlights and concepts that you need to study in greater detail.
And so,
then the second email you'll be receiving will be the pre-work for next week's knowledge areas, which are management and leadership and business. So if any of you did not get the previous 2 emails for session number 2, the follow-up to session 1, and this one, the pre-work for session 2, please let me know and I'll forward it out.
well, thank you all. And we will see you next week. Have a great week.
Okay, so we've got some questions.